All right, guys, we are back at 1640 AM K-Talk Radio. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I'm your host, Yoshi Shiraki. Today we have Justin Puchar as our special guest. He is diving into how to build a rental portfolio. So, Justin, somebody's out there listening, they don't have a single rental, and they now want to consider developing some path to wealth so that they can retire comfortably. Real estate for me has been that vehicle that I've been utilizing. What would you say is the very first step that someone would need to consider? And maybe I'll add to it after your first step, but what's the very first thing someone should be, the second this show ends, they should go do?
Oh, man, I wish there was just one. Because I feel like there's a lot of things you've got to do and you got to consider. You got to gather your assets. You got to dream a little bit, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to figure out what you want to do.
Yep.
And I think most people think that, hey, somebody else is being successful, or Yoshi's killing it and he's making all this money. I want to do what he's doing, right?
Right.
And that's okay, right? You can live on that borrowed light for a time, but you've got to figure out if that's what you really love. You might get a couple of rental properties and just not like it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
And it may be because you're trying to self-manage that you don't like it.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so I think you have to deep dive and figure out what you like. And so figure out what your constraints are. Gather your assets, talk to a loan officer, see what you're capable of buying financially. And then I would say, you know, the challenge with, I think, our local Utah economy or market is there's a ton of realtors out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because you're licensed doesn't mean you've got the expertise that is going to make you successful in rentals, right? Or
Right.
cash flow.
Right.
Or understanding a cap rate, or understanding what's an internal rate of return, or how do I get a return on this money? And so I would say sometimes it's not best to work with somebody that's in your family,
Right.
right? You've got a relationship with, and you feel obligated to use. Seek out an expert. Seek out somebody that can really, that's at a spot you want to be, and you
Yeah.
want to model, right? Like I'm not going to follow somebody that's just got a Lamborghini that they rented because they think it's cool, right?
Right.
That's not attractive to me. Now that might be attractive to other people, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I want that guy that's got a ton of assets, right? That he's done, you know, a ton of apartment buildings, or he owns, you know, 80 rentals, or whatever it may be. Like that.
Yep.
That's what I look up to. It's not the flashy, shiny object that revs up real fast.
Awesome. So basically, I heard you say, look at your assets. Let's assume somebody out there just has an owner-occupied building. So from that asset, they have one house, they live in it.
Right.
They're going to talk, then I heard you say, discuss with the loan officer your capabilities of what you could purchase, right? And that individual will probably take into consideration your assets.
Yeah.
It's really, I guess, at that point to see what you're qualified to buy, right?
Right,
Okay.
right. So remember we talked about the most economical way for you to begin is use your own credit, right?
Yeah.
Use your own money.
Yep.
So
Awesome.
that's why you want to talk to a loan officer or somebody.
Perfect. And there are a lot of people out there, it's surprising, had tons of conversations over the years of doing real estate where someone will say, well, I'll talk to a loan officer next year. I don't think I qualify this year. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I had a foreclosure, a bankruptcy, this or that, or I lost my job, or I had bad credit, or this. It's incredible how quickly these things can be repaired if they get in touch with a good loan officer. And sometimes they qualify today, right? And I've worked with several people that didn't think they'd qualify for another 12 months, but after putting them in touch with certain loan officers that I work with, they're like, actually, if you do this one thing, you qualify today. So if you're listening and you think, okay, that's great advice, I'll talk to a loan officer, but it's not time now, I would say do it tomorrow, or do it Monday, right? Start, and then you'll really know if, yeah, you are 12 months away.
Well, and here's the other thing is you might say, well, yeah, maybe the end of 2020 is what I want to do. I would meet with somebody today because there's things that can pop up on your credit, judgment. Loan programs are always changing. Your credit's changing. There's fraud.
Yep.
So you want to figure that out sooner than later because it could be fixed in 4 or 5 months, right? Maybe,
Absolutely.
right?
Yep.
But if you wait, you get a house under contract, and then you go and talk to the lender, and there's a blip.
Yep.
You're kind of screwed.
Absolutely.
So be very methodical in what you're doing, and really if you're working with experienced people, they're going to help you get there. And maybe I should share with you my very first experience. Back in 2003, I started looking at a house, right? Mm-hmm. So I hired an agent, and let's call him Alan.
Okay.
Alan was not very good at what he did, right? Like, He was very experienced, but he just didn't know. Like, he would send me properties, and I'm like, how do I know if this is a good deal?
Right.
And he just really couldn't provide an answer, right? He's that prototypical car salesman, that persona that you just don't, it just doesn't instill confidence in you getting what you want.
Right.
So, so you give me a list, and there's 2 properties. One is $20,000 less than the other one in the same neighborhood, right?
Right.
So I'm like, let's do that one.
Yeah.
That seems to make sense.
Right.
It was bank owned. He didn't tell me that there was a way to do due diligence. I couldn't turn on the utilities. I was really buying this house blind.
Got
It's
it.
crazy.
Yeah.
And you and I both know you should do all those different things.
Right.
You should check it out.
Yeah.
So we buy this property, and I was literally ready to back out of it. My buddy slapped me on the back and said, he said, this is how we're going to be successful as we take risks. And I'm like, shaking in my boots, and I'm like, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
And we close it, and I still remember to this day, after we closed, and I turned on the utilities, and I was like praying that it would all turn on.
Right.
It did, right?
And the water wasn't leaking. And
So the reason I share that example with you is he was referred to me by my friend that helped him buy 5 properties. And this agent didn't even own a property. And there's no knock to that, right?
Right.
But what I'm saying is, he isn't where I wanted to be.
Right.
He didn't provide the experience. He actually got me there with some dumb luck, right?
Right.
Now, if somebody's ready to start, I'm probably going to say, do what is comfortable to you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If it's commercial, great. If it's apartments, great. If it's single family, we all identify with single family, I think, because we probably grew up in a house or a rental or something.
Right.
It's identifiable that there's a kitchen, right?
Yeah.
Like, I grew up pretty on the low end of wealth, really poor.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to do projects, right? Like re-roof the house. Like, we didn't have a pneumatic air nailer, right?
Right.
We did it by hand.
Right.
We had to finish the base. I'm cutting hand saw.
Wow. Yes.
We bought a power saw. Crazy things like that. Like, we built cabinets.
Mm.
So some of these skills really translate into real estate before I even knew, because I had this construction background and I could understand how the houses works, how the rehab happens, and how to fix something.
Got it.
And so start where you're comfortable. Just so happens for me, I kind of gravitate into turning shit into champagne. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of beat up houses and there's perfect houses.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with a perfect house. It's just less opportunity for me.
Right.
Not that I want to be greedy, but I want the cash flow and the equity.
Yeah.
And I know how to force the appreciation. I know the repairs to do, or I know how to get it done more economically so that I can actually turn it into the perfect house.
Yeah.
But I can actually participate in the equity appreciation.
Yep, that's awesome. And I loved how you say if you've got a goal and it's something that you might not tackle till the end of 2020, but you should address it today, it at least gives you a plan of what to start on for the next 12 months that may need to be completed. I don't know if you follow Gary Vaynerchuk much, but yeah, Gary V. So I like watching a lot of Gary Vaynerchuk content, and he had a caller who called in and she said, listen, my 9 to 5 barely covers our living expenses, and then I have all this other debt. So she says, I can pay our minimum payment on all our credit cards, pay my mortgage, pay my car, have some food to eat, but then there's no money left over to invest in. And Gary talks about, investing in yourself and being an entrepreneur and all that stuff. And he, talked to her, how much debt do you have? And I can't remember, it was like 50 grand in credit card debt. And she's like, how can I ever start a business when I've already 50 in the hole? And, he put a plan together for her where he's like, okay, well, you just said that your current employment right now only covers the minimum payment of those credit cards. So he says, you know what? Get a second job. Get a second job and maybe work part-time, full-time, depending on how hungry you are to get rid of that debt. But get a part-time, full-time second job, whether it's the 7-Eleven on the night shift or at the airport at the late nights or something. That second income will be completely dedicated to paying down your debt. And then, once your debt's paid off, he says, keep that second job to build a little reserve. And then he actually said, go flip real estate.
Yeah.
And he says, use that second job to fund the renovations, right? Save some money to fund the renovations, go get a mortgage, buy the house. Then now you've got a little pool of money to fund the renovations. And now you can start to build some wealth, going from 50 negative to 50 50 positive.
People are too anxious to just like quit their job, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
they hate their job. But think about it, it's the end result. Like, keep that day job,
Yeah.
leverage it, right?
Right.
Use the income, utilize the second job, right?
Yep.
Use the side hustle to get where you ultimately want to be. But I'm telling you, most people I meet, they're just so anxious to quit their job, they don't even know if this is a passion of real estate.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so, you know, like, maybe you're going to be in this thing 8-10 years before you figure it out.
Yeah. That's
Right?
true.
Like a 2 or 3 year, you know, foray into real estate doesn't mean you're there.
Right, right, exactly. And like you said, you don't even know if you're going to like it. I mean, with real estate, I usually compare it to Baskin Robbins. There's 31 flavors of ice cream. And I love ice cream, but that doesn't mean I love all 31 flavors. Real estate's similar in that there's flipping, there's wholesaling, there's retail, there's commercial, there's office, there's self-storage. I've tasted probably not all 31 flavors, but I tasted a lot of the flavors. And out of all the flavors I tasted, my favorite flavor happens to be fixing and flipping. Although I realize rentals is where the wealth is built.
I like cookie dough.
Yeah, I make chocolate chip. So it may take some, like you said, experimenting, playing around, tasting different flavors before you go, I love rentals. Or I understand rentals is what builds wealth, and I don't love it, so I'll flip as well. Whatever it might be. Or, you know, maybe you have a great job.
Well, your interests are going to change too.
Yeah.
As an investor, and we see people, I mean, I'm here 17 years, I'm going to change, right?
Sure.
I've changed, and things get boring. You could just be buying single families, and I see this happen all the time. They get really bored. They're like, this is just,
Yeah.
I want to get into development. I want to do a 150 unit apartment building.
Right.
And those are risky, right?
Right.
But you got to think about what's the base hit? What's getting you where you want to be? Have a varied approach.
Yeah.
If it's boring in business, that usually means it's on autopilot. It's actually producing good results. You've learned things.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good.
It's good.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not wrong to dabble in other things, but keep that main flow that's producing the asset or the cash flow or the monetary result for 10 or 20 years down the road. Keep that going.
Yep. And there's a lot of listeners out there who may actually love what they do. They're in the 9 to 5 of their passion, right? And so just building a portfolio is just a great opportunity for them to have a retirement. They might not even want to retire anytime soon. Like my dad hates the thought of retiring. He loves what he does. But he has rentals to the day he can't work anymore,
right.
You know, because his health maybe prohibits or whatever. He's got rentals that can support his lifestyle.